like smoking Joe Frazier, the Hellraiser, raising hell with the flavor, terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan, swinging through your town like your neighborhood Spider-Man.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and I'm joined by Sean Keenan.
Hey, Heidi, you want to see Spider-Man riding around in a boat?
And, of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and is it just me, or does Spider-Man get shot a lot in this movie?
A lot of people get shot in this movie, and that's why we're doing just the Wu-Tang, just for people getting shot. But no, we are here today, everybody, because our lovely people that support us over at patreon.com/HMP have decided that this week we are going to be covering Spider-Man: The Dragon's Challenge. It's also got another name. What's it? Let me check this out for half a second here because I forget.
The Chinese Web.
The Chinese Web, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, neither's title. I mean, they both take place in China, I suppose, so that counts. But we'll be talking about that. You guys really did it again, didn't you? So we'll be covering that. But at the top of the show, we do want to let you know that coming up next weekend, our show is going to be a little bit different. It's actually going to be a live show. And you know what? You can actually attend that live show if you are in Atlanta this Labor Day weekend on Sunday, of all things. So we're actually recording on our regular show day. How about that? But we're going to be covering Roger Corman's Fantastic Four and reviewing that live for you at DragonCon. And Matt Smith is actually going to join us for that. So we'll have a third, even though Sean will be still yet on the road yet again. What are you? You just put Willie Nelson in the car whenever you turn the key, or what, buddy?
Listen, I'm very busy.
Hey, here's the thing. Sean manages to be in Atlanta every weekend this year, except for the weekend Adam comes to town when he goes to Charlotte, which I don't think's an accident.
Very telling. Very telling. I am not saying, I'm just saying. So we'll be there, and we'll also be doing a live film find, a live preacher podcast and stuff. So if you are in the Atlanta area, I know we have a couple of people that definitely are, and I know there's a handful that definitely will be there. Show up, man. Show up. We'd really appreciate that, and we'll see and talk to everybody. It's for me, it's always a really fun time of the year. It is kind of like nerd summer camp. You go away, and then you have a little bit of fun, and then it's back to the grind. So check us out at DragonCon, everybody. So let's. Excuse me. I got ahead of myself a little bit because we have another iTunes review, gentlemen, and it's a 5-star review, aka Humdinger.
Humdinger.
Wow. And it's entitled, Humdinger. And it comes to us from T Brownie 34. T Brownies, T Brownie through T Brownie 33 were taken, so we got T Brownie 34.
I was just going to say, out of all the T Brownies in the world, 34 is my favorite.
Hey, look, it's kind of like the what was that? What the peanut butter solution or whatever? You got to wait till they get to the right thing, and then you figure it all out. It reads as follows: This podcast is awesome. This is a daily listen for me at work, whether it be listening to the previous episodes or the weekly new release. These guys are very insightful and understand how to make even a bad movie fun. Great work, guys. Can't wait to hear more of your stuff. That is from T Brownie 34. T Brownie 34, thank you for your 5-star review, aka Humdinger.
Humdinger.
And we love it when anybody goes out and drops us those 5-star reviews. It helps get this show out to more people. We've got another one coming up for next week, everybody, so stay tuned for that. Well, like I said, we every single month we take some, I guess, what do we call it? Just a random handful of movies and throw them out to our Patreon people and say, which one of these do you want us to review? And this week, for some reason, they chose Spider-Man, the Chinese Web, a.k.a. Spider-Man, the Dragon's Challenge. And this isn't much of a trailer because, as you might imagine, well, we'll talk about why there's probably not a real good trailer for it. But let's go ahead and take a listen to what could best be surmised as a trailer.
Back in 1946, I was an agent for the Chinese Army.
You were a spy?
Get back to the hotel.
Why don't I take him to a farm in the new territories? He can have a quiet, peaceful grave without anyone nosing around.
Scintillating, no?
Perfect trailer for this movie. I'm just going to say that. Perfect
The trailer is exactly like the movie. But
Yes.
have you guys seen the movie poster for this movie? It is awesome.
Yeah.
Makes it look like a kung fu movie.
It's so great. I want it so bad. I want that movie poster so bad. I haven't had a movie poster up in my house since, like I was in college. But I might get one I might get that for my office.
Yeah, man. This would be the first one I've had up since Showgirls. That would be cool.
Well, that's a different deal.
Hey, I'm a big Saved by the Bell fan.
Who
Papa,
is?
why do I have such strong feelings towards that poster in your office?
One day, son. One day. You'll just walk in and go,
It's
oh.
all about the dancing, son. I watched it for the dancing.
He's a strict choreography, the critic. So he's just like, I'm only in it for this. Spider-Man the Dragon's Challenge from 1979 is what our Patreon supporters voted for. Here's the IMDb plotline. As we know, IMDb always 100% correct in everything they say and or do. The 2 episodes of the TV series Spider-Man edited together released as a feature.
And you know exactly when, you go from episode 1 to episode 2.
This is directed by Don McDougal. Starring Nicholas Hammond, who we've covered as Spider-Man before, and Ellen Bride Chipfields, Robert F. Simpson, and more. Well, we've covered Spider-Man a billion times. I'm always willing and ready to see how he's going to go through the hoops that he goes through, so let's do it. Try to connect this bad boy to comic books, Bruce.
Well, we've had a lot of opportunities to talk about Spider-Man on this show, and I'm pretty sure we'll have many more. But today I just wanted to talk a little bit about Spider-Man's creator, Steve Ditko. Sadly, Mr. Ditko passed away about 2 months ago, and I don't think we ever took a minute to talk about the comic book legend here on the show after his passing. So Ditko did live to the ripe age of 90, so I'm happy that he did enjoy a long life, but he is missed just the same. A personal moment of mine that gives me perspective on just how significant Ditko was relates to Jim Starlin. And when I was speaking with Starlin just a couple of weeks before Ditko's passing, actually.
Do you want to pick that up? That name you just dropped there, you want to pick that up a little bit?
Oh, yeah. Well, Jim Starlin, creator of Thanos, he told me that Kirby was God number 1 and Ditko was God number 2. And in my opinion, that's high praise from an accomplished creator in his own right. Starlin got one of his first comic book gigs finishing Ditko art for Marvel. And what he called finishing, many people would call inking. But unlike most creators, and you guys may not know this, but Ditko would actually do portions of his original art in ink. So only part of the panels would need inking. And I don't know how much you guys understand the creative process involved with comic book art, but the idea of starting off in ink is unbelievable. The talent, the foresight, the confidence that's required to do that for the quality of work that Ditko produced is phenomenal. You add to that the fact that other than perhaps Jack Kirby, no high-level comic artist was anywhere near as prodigious as Ditko was during the Silver and Bronze Ages. And you may or may not know that Steve Ditko was born in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And Johnstown's a blue-collar town with a tradition of steel production. And it's also a town that suffered many floods, believe it or not. But its people were hardworking and resilient. And these qualities are definitely exhibited by Ditko. Now, I've already mentioned the volume of his output, the way he worked in inks at times, but he was also resilient. He tread some rough waters at Marvel. He went to DC where he created Hawk and Dove and the Creeper. And then he went to Charlton Comics where he created The Question and Captain Atom, as well as the best Blue Beetle, Ted Kord. And it's hard to argue that his work outside of Marvel had anywhere near as much impact, but his work at Charlton served significantly as the inspiration for Watchmen. And not just the characters that Ditko created, but Ditko himself influenced how Alan Moore wrote Watchmen. It's no secret that Alan Moore doesn't always get along well with others in the comics industry.
What?
And he didn't like Ditko's political philosophy. Ditko was an ardent supporter of objectivism, and I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about what objectivism is, but I do know that Ayn Rand was a big fan of it. Most of the people I've met who admire Ayn Rand are not people I enjoy being around, so I'll just leave it at that. But Alan Moore was free to take his pot shots at Ditko without any fear of return fire because Ditko was notoriously reclusive, like J.D. Salinger levels of reclusive. And he mostly declined to give interviews or make public appearances. He explained all the way back in 1969, and this is a quote, "When I do a job, it's not my personality that I'm offering the readers, but my artwork. It's not what I'm like that counts. It's what I did and how well it was done. I produce a product, a comic art story. Steve Ditko is the brand name." A little bit later on, in 2012, Ditko said that he had made no income on the 4 Spider-Man films released at that time. And for some reason, he didn't mention the Nicholas Hammond projects. I don't know what that, what's behind that. But the people involved with creating the Doctor Strange film a couple of years ago purposely just declined to contact Steve Ditko, the creator of Doctor Strange, because they thought that that they wouldn't be welcome. So they sort of respected his privacy, I guess. I fully respect Ditko's decision to live his private life privately, and I'm glad comics is one of the few industries in which one can be at once well-known and anonymous. In the initial creative meetings to develop Spider-Man as a character, Stan Lee didn't feel that he and Jack Kirby shared the same vision, so Stan Lee turned to Ditko. And Ditko recalled, "One of the first things I did was to work up a costume, a vital visual part of the character. I had to know how he looked before I did any breakdowns. For example, a clinging power so he wouldn't have hard shoes or boots, a hidden wrist shooter versus a web gun and holster, etc. I wasn't sure Stan would like the idea of covering the character's face, but I did it because it hid an obviously boyish face. I would also add mystery to the character." In a letter to a fanzine, which is kind of like what blogs and podcasts were back before technology existed, Ditko said he would continue drawing Spider-Man, and I quote, "if nothing better comes along," end quote. So that's a tall order. Not much can be better than one of the most recognizable comic book characters of all time, rivaled only perhaps by DC's Batman. Ditko shared a studio in Manhattan at 43rd Street and 8th Avenue, if you want to know the corner, with a noted fetish artist named Eric Stanton. He was an art school classmate of Steve Ditko's, and folks have often pointed out the similarities between Spidey's costume and certain fetish garb that I'll call gimp chic. I think it goes without saying that people think Stanton helped create the look, but Stanton himself denies those suggestions, which is kind of a fresh approach to things in this time when it seems like everybody wants to take credit for stuff. As far as anyone knows, Ditko never married or had children. Of course, if there was a person who could have had a secret life and family, it was probably Ditko. But be that as it may, without any known biological offspring, it is up to us, the ones who love Spider-Man, to serve as Ditko's kids, to keep his memory fresh for all who love comics, and to preserve his legacy with the love, attention, and honesty that the man deserves. Rest in peace, you mysterious man who loved to sketch for the funny books.
Yeah, that was the thing, is like Ditko for so long, like, throughout the years, it was always like, is he still alive? Because he was never anywhere, ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no interviews, not even phone calls, no radio interviews. He did have a few, folks that he would maintain some written correspondence with, and almost any time he had a public statement, it was, written and released. It was a sort of like press release style. It wasn't like actual spoken words that he released.
I like to think of it like war correspondence, like you have in the documentaries. Dearest Judith, I have drawn yet another Spider-Man for the funny books.
Spider-Man is good. Stop. Here comes the next issue. Stop. I hope you enjoy it. Stop. Get this to Western Union at once, young lad.
You didn't have to. We paid for that extra line in there, you idiot. How dare you?
He didn't say stop. He's still waiting.
What an idiot. The Spider-Man TV show back in the day had many episodes, and my guess is, and because there's not a ton of information out on this thing, is that they basically put these 2 episodes together, and my guess is they really wanted to aim towards the Chinese market. And as Sean, as I know a lot of times productions will just go, what can we do to get a free vacation? Oh, I know. Are things in China? It's in China. Let's go to China. Can we go to China? You've
This
approved
does
China.
look-
Sweet.
This does look a little bit like that. It also was probably a lot cheaper to shoot in China.
I was going to say, it also looks like, well, we need something big for the finale. So how about, I've got it. Spider-Man goes to Scotland. Have you seen the exchange rate? Let's send him to China. It's cheaper.
Yeah, there's that. Also, like when you're watching Spider-Man at one point crawl up the side of that skyscraper, there's probably not a whole lot of safety equipment going on with that climb. You know what I mean?
The Chinese stuntman isn't going to have the same union, I guess you could say, right?
Exactly.
As the one in L.A. would have.
Exactly. But let me ask this, right? So, and Adam, I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
All right.
What is the plot to this movie?
That's a very good question. It's convoluted to me. This one guy, the older gentleman there, he has
Correct.
some sort of secret or something. I can't quite tell you what that is. He's got some sort of secret. These other guys, they're like, that cat's got some secrets. And they send people after him. They fake his death. And I still to this day, I don't know exactly what he had that was so good.
Okay, let me try, because they didn't fake his death. He actually died. Here's the thing.
No. They faked his death for a little bit.
They send assassins to kill him, and he dies of a heart attack. So the assassins go back and say, we did it. And he goes, no, you didn't. He died of a heart attack. You didn't assassinate him. And they're like, yeah, but he's still dead. What's the difference? And they said, well, now he's got friends. Like, even if they had succeeded in assassinating him, he would still have friends, I would assume. Now, I'm going to try to get a good plot recap here and see if I do any better. But apparently, some people were spies for Mao Zedong, or maybe spies against Mao Zedong, the communist leader of China. And like a school teacher got shot or murdered or whatever you want to call it, like a war crime or something in China. And the Chinese government has blamed this Chinese man for being the guilty party, but there are some folks that know he didn't do it in America. Now, there's this white guy that kind of looks like Larry Tate from
Right.
who wants this man dead because he's got a business contract. That the only reason he got the business contract is because Min Lo Chan, the Chinese gentleman, is a murderous traitor in the government's eyes. So he can't
He's
have
on a lamb.
Yeah, so he can't have the contract. But if his name gets cleared, then this Larry Tate guy will lose the contract. Now, I thought that the Larry Tate guy was the one who actually murdered someone, but no, he's like his involvement begins and ends with he wants this contract because
For $1 billion to make a steel mill.
And then he's never seen again, really, after the initial part. But he sends some crack assassins to New York, 3 of them who seem like they're already in New York, which is weird. Like these are all New Yorkers in Hong Kong, and he sends them back. And this crack team of assassins have a real good approach to things. Like if the 3 of us were hired to be assassins, I want to be the guy that says, you guys go kill him. I'm taking a nap. Like, honestly, an assassin taking a nap is a key part of the plot. And then
We did it. It's in the newspaper. The man's had a heart attack. We're going to go back to Hong Kong as heroes.
and then it turns out that the former Army colonel has become a Chinese history teacher at a college, but the former Army colonel was actually the one who did the spying or something.
Who Peter
But he
Parker
also
just happened to have had a class with back when?
Yeah, and then to sum it up, this colonel guy, Peter Parker, and an actual Chinese woman go back to Hong Kong, where Peter Parker and the white dude, who's the former Army colonel, mansplain Chinese culture to the Chinese woman while they're in Hong Kong.
Which is brilliant.
And then there's a boat involved, and Peter Parker gets cured by acupuncture. The end.
I say this, man, if you've ever watched any of the Spider-Man films and you've said to yourself, why ain't Spider-Man driving a boat? This is your movie.
I would love to see
riding a junk.
I would love to see this exact same movie, same plot, same script to the letter, only with Andrew Garfield.
It's selling the Chinese market.
But
it is at one point I was like halfway through the movie and I was like, oh, that's why they're here. Okay, that's the plot of this movie. Okay, because the old industrialist, the old wealthy American industrialist who lives in Hong Kong basically says what the plot of the movie is, and it's like an hour and 15 minutes into the thing when he says it.
Yeah,
I'm
this
like,
thing's...
oh, that's why we had to follow around that really shady assassin-looking Asian guy for the first 4 minutes of this movie, where he's literally like he watches a guy get on a plane and leave the country, and then we see him just go about his day for 4 minutes.
I love that late 70s, early 80s TV aesthetic where it's like, what are they going to do? Sit at the TV while it's blank? We can put anything to fill the time.
There's a lot of shots of watching people get in and out of cars in this movie where, like when Peter and his crew are in Hong Kong, we watch them get in and out of that Mercedes limo no less than 3 times.
Well, if you remember the last one of these that we did, that was also a big theme of that Spider-Man, made for TV movie, was a lot of like getting in and out of cars and standing around crime scenes, doing a little bit more pontificating than you normally would, getting back in said car and then driving off.
Yes.
Now, if I can point out what I think was the worst offender in terms of wasting time, and I know we're jumping all over the place, but when Spider-Man is face down in the bay and the guy in the boat comes and rescues Spider-Man, he's like 7 feet from the dock, and he rows the boat, like whatever the equivalent of treading water in a boat is. Like, it's supposed to look like he's actually rowing the boat towards the dock, but he's actually already there. So he's just pretending to row the boat, but you can clearly see the dock, so it loses all effect. And you just see this weird guy twitch with like an oar in a boat for about 3 minutes before they take Spider-Man out of the boat.
You're looking at that guy rowing and you're just like, no, you've got to go deeper than that. You've got to put it in and then push it. You're not doing it right. It looks like this is your job. You think you would know this by now.
It's strange. But before I watched this movie, I threw it up on the TV with YouTube or whatever. And my son, my 10-year-old, who watched Superman Returns with me last week, I said, hey, you want to watch a Spider-Man movie? And didn't give him any context. He goes, sure. And I said, and I'll see if you can tell me if you like this one better than Superman Returns that we watched last week. And he goes, oh, it's got Spider-Man in it, so there's a 50,000% chance I'm going to like it better. I said, oh, son, we're going to talk some more when this movie's over.
And then the Waka Jawaka music starts, and he's like, oh, no, what have I gotten myself into?
Oh, I love it.
He spent long stretches of the movie playing Fortnite, but he did sit with me through the whole thing.
Oh, good kid.
That is the best soundtrack of all. It's just, and then they get into it, and it's so good.
So this movie is, right when you hit credits, it's an hour and 32 minutes long. This movie, like it's from credit to credit. So of just pure movie, it's an hour and 32 minutes long. Can you take a guess how long Spider-Man is in costume for on screen?
Maybe 6 minutes.
Your guess is 6 minutes?
Yeah.
I'm going to go a little higher than that. If an hour and 30, I think we got to have a good solid 17 to 20 minutes of Spider-Man.
Well, if we're going by Price is Right rules where you can't go over, then Adam wins. Yeah. But you are closer, Bruce, because the actual time is 15 minutes, 8 seconds of Spider-Man in costume for an hour and 32-minute long movie.
That doesn't involve an origin story.
And these properties always seem to have this fear of putting somebody in a costume on screen for too long. And I think part of it's because they knew the costume didn't look that great.
Not for nothing. Did you see the costume?
Yeah, but it's like even in the latter seasons when we were all very comfortable with Greatest American Hero, he only put the costume on in like the last 10 minutes or so to solve the problem usually. Like you get a little bit of it in the beginning, a little bit of it in the end, and not much costume through most of the show. And it's the same time period, more or less. Like they just had this weird thing about being afraid to put the costumes on screen.
I think that's more William Cat going, I'm not walking around set all day wearing that. One day a week.
William Cat, for God's sake.
I don't have to take this. I was in Carrie.
Oh, yeah. And you just wait. I'll be in a great dinosaur movie called Baby someday. But a couple of the observations from a fresh set of eyes as my son watched this with me. First of all, he couldn't understand why Spider-Man held his hand straight out like a really lame karate chop when he shot his web.
It's the worst, isn't it? Oh, it's so bad. It's just like that is. It's such a, and you feel like the second you make that connection in your head, you're like, I'm such a sad, pathetic nerd that really bothers me. But boy, it does it ever.
And he also wanted to know why he only had web shooters on one arm instead of both. And then when he did shoot the webs, my son pointed out, those don't look like webs. Those look like ropes. And I said, well, do you know why they look like ropes? And he asked me why. And I said, because they're ropes. That's all that there is to it, are ropes. The climbing did look pretty good, man. I am going to say that I actually felt fear in my chest, not for Spider-Man, but for the stuntman scaling the side of that building.
Here's the thing. We've come a long way from that last Spider-Man one that we reviewed where the green screen in front of the house was just so unbelievably awful that, like, when you look at this, you're just like, I'm sure there's maybe a safety thing, but boy, oh boy, they are doing it.
And they only gave us one of those, what I'll call Batman and Robin wall climbing scenes. Like, they did have one where you see, like, the close-up where it just doesn't look good of Nicholas Hammond climbing up the wall. But for the most part, they did these long shots that really look good.
And here's the bad part with that bit that you're talking about, Bruce, is that it's so close to being cool, but it's not, because they just screwed it up on that last little bit, because the way that his hands move up there doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't look like he's putting any effort into it. And let me tell you, see what you boys think. I like Spider-Man going on the tips of fingers as opposed to palms of hands. That doesn't make any sense, the palms of the hands. I like the fingers and more of a real proper crawling method. This just seemed like him kind of wax on and wax offing the, up the thing. But I think some of the like almost first person kind of stuff is pretty cool. It's just like it was almost really cool, but then they were like, we'll half it as best we can.
I also like it that Min Lo Chan, this Chinese minister of industry that's been accused of some horrible crime, he leaves the country pretty easily. Well, he is in Hong Kong, not in mainland China. So I don't understand if he's like, I don't understand who he's in trouble with, but he doesn't like abscond away in a disguise in the back of a truck that gets loaded in the cargo bay of some like plane that's just supposed to be carrying like Chinese toys to sell in the American market and gets smuggled out of the country. Like, he flies commercial, right?
Yeah.
And he takes his niece or daughter, granddaughter, takes, the young lady with him, or is she already in New York when he gets there? I can't remember that part. Emily Chan, that was his daughter or granddaughter, whatever she was.
You mean Exposition Girl?
Sure. But anyway, he goes there, and the first place he goes is straight to J. Jonah Jameson. Two things that are interesting are that these guys were friends in college. Because I'm having trouble buying that J. Jonah Jameson and this guy were like popular in college or were friends in college. And then they said the Min Lo Chan majored in like astrophysics and engineering and always got like straight A's. But for some reason, J. Jonah Jameson, who I will assume majored in journalism, was voted most likely to succeed. Now, journalism majors maybe have changed a lot since way back when J. Jonah Jameson was in school. But, if there's only 2 students in the whole school, and those 2 students are Min Lo Chan and J. Jonah Jameson, even in that situation, I don't think J. Jonah Jameson gets elected most likely to succeed.
Weren't we the most awesome 2 people of that entire school? You bet we were.
Oh, yeah, I got straight A's, got my PhD in 7 months. What? Oh, yeah, you learned that whole inverted pyramid writing style. Yeah.
Ridiculous.
And then the assassins show up in a taxi. Are they in a taxi? How do they get there, man?
No, they're hanging out.
Because I know they're like in a car, the 3 of them, and the one guy says he's going to go take a nap while the other 2 are supposed to go.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I forgot.
Look,
yeah.
I need to go take it. Okay, it's real important that we kill this guy quick. I'm going to take a nap. Man, you just don't see action adventure movie writing involving naps these days.
Jason Bourne takes a nap.
I mean, who even decides to put that in there, and how does it stay? I can understand if he says, I'm going to go back to the hotel room and get things organized. You report back and tell me what happened. I can understand anything other than this is very important. I'm your leader. I'm taking a nap.
Well, there's a really weird thing with this movie, which is that, it's clearly made for kids, and it totally works because this was the first Spider-Man that I ever saw. Yeah. I saw Spider-Man on the Electric Company first. Yep. Then I saw this one, specifically this one I saw. And it was the greatest thing I had ever seen when I saw it. It was like 79. So I was, like 5 or 6 years old. And whenever Spider-Man came on screen, it was the greatest thing I had ever seen. But I remember there being just large swaths of time where I didn't care what was happening. Yeah. So why are there over and over and over again, there's just talking heads and like people in like really terribly terribly dressed sets where it's clearly in a hotel room for a lot of this stuff, where you're just like, man, guys, like Peter, let's take Peter Parker's apartment, right? So you're in Peter Parker's apartment. This is your main character. It looks like they rented like a hotel room and they put a couple of things around. Like, because I had to pause it for a second just so I could laugh because, of what I do for a living. So like you're in Peter Parker's apartment and there is a couch that looks like it's something that his grandmother might have. On the left-hand table, there is a phone. There is a bowl with nothing in it next to the phone. And by next to it, I mean, it's literally touching the phone and there's a lamp. And there's nothing in this place. The only thing missing are framed pictures of forks, Adam. Yeah. It is so incredible that this, I know this movie is supposed to be for kids, but you have over an hour of just grown men talking to each other. Like it's literally what this movie is for half of the movie.
This certainly
wasn't the movie.
It was an error that they didn't care.
What makes it even more ironic to me is the point in the movie when the guy decides to take a nap is one of the few parts where we get to see Spider-Man fighting somebody. Like that's when you should stay awake. Take a nap through like the middle 45 to 50 minutes of the movie, buddy. Not right then.
So good. Like, and there's, like the special effects in this movie, as we were going to say anyway. I mean, they're just so fun to watch. I mean, it's so bad, but it's so great. And in 79, keep in mind, Superman is in movie theaters, like the first Superman, where it's amazing and, like a sight for the eyes and just incredible. I mean, one of the best. We're even, are we getting pretty close to Incredible Hulk time at this point, too? I mean, a show that like on television, you would expect similar capabilities, but they did so much better there. It's done really well. Yeah. And, it's just so amazing that, how does this exist? How is this so? And this was on for a long time. Like, this isn't something I know they kind of chopped it up because it was one season, right? And then they chop it up into like little movies. Yeah. Like this was on for a while because this is where the clones come from, too. This is Spider-Man clones come from the third one, right? The third, movie, quote unquote. I think this is the third. I think the clones were in the second movie. Oh, it's the second one of the clones. Yeah. And so that's because that's the other part I remember too, is like, wow, there's two Spider-Mans. That's crazy. Oh man. But I love the way that they have to deal with how is Spider-Man going to fight? Because Spider-Man's got to fight some bad guys to be a Spider-Man show, movie, whatever. And he's got to win. Let me cut you off for a second because I have every single Spider-Man takedown and how Spider-Man beats every single person in this movie, right? Yeah. So did you want to go ahead, or you want me to fill in the blanks? I'll start with the first one that comes to mind. Is there's the one that I wanted to talk about, I should say, is there's the assassin, like the blonde, sort of, I guess, muscular for the time guy with this tiny gun in the area where they have stacks of newspapers. And I remember this because
Spider-Man disarms him, so he throws a stack of newspapers at Spider-Man. Spider-Man ducks out of the way of the stack of newspapers, then throws it back at the guy, and that's how he knocks him out. Is with his,
It
and
trips
it's not
him.
The best part
Trips
about
him
that,
with a stack of newspapers.
it
and
doesn't
it's not
go
like a huge stack. Like a middle school kid could easily carry the stack of newspapers around for a long time.
But it doesn't even like go through his legs to trip him. It literally like touches the back of his feet and knocks him out practically unconscious. And it just because it bounces right back. Like they don't even go through his legs to knock his legs, out from underneath him. He just hits him and he just falls down like a house of cards.
It's so good.
And then this guy, we find out, he's going away for a long time. We're going to have to hire another third person because we couldn't dare have this guy quit napping. Like they even have a conversation about needing another person because one person needs to be free to nap at all times.
Now, and granted, with that scene though, while not the fighting is not very good, at least they've got enough production value out of all the newspapers being made to where something looks kind of cool. Something's going on, it looks good as opposed to a lot of the other stuff that doesn't look so hot. But if you've ever been at a place that, makes newspapers and stuff, it's pretty cool. Like there's a lot of cool, neat stuff going on. So, you can just point a camera and you're going to look at something cool. So, but sadly they pointed at two guys fighting like 8-year-olds.
Oh, so great.
The stack of newspapers takedown was a favorite. And
Oh my God. I laughed when I saw it. It was so great.
and there might be another fight that goes down that I don't remember. But man,
I've got them all. You ready to hear
Yeah.
how Spider-Man takes everybody down?
but don't get to the subway. I've got a lot to say about the subway.
Well, the subway, he doesn't take those guys out. He only
know.
grabs the microfilm.
But I got stuff to say about the subway when he gets shot in the back.
Oh my God. So good.
So
good.
weird.
So good. So here's how Spider-Man this is the way Spider-Man takes every single bad guy down, right? So we already mentioned tripping a guy with a small stack of newspapers. Then he punches a guy in the face, pretty standard.
Yeah.
Lightly slaps a guy in the back and he smashes into a wall, knocking him out.
There's a lot of just like very kind of, I've hit you, haven't I?
Webs a guy's hands and feet together as he's holding a gun.
I like
Why
that
doesn't
one,
the
actually.
guy just shoot him? What's going on with
Anytime the white nylon rope comes out, I'm liking this movie.
Oh man, me too. Or the Spidey sense where it freeze frames and then the lights come on his eyes. It's so good.
Yeah, I love it.
So good.
My
Okay,
son
so-
asked me, he said, did Spider-Man used to have X-ray vision or something?
It's so good.
And you got to look at him and just go like, I don't know what the heck they're doing.
Oh, I love that so much. So then another way he takes two guys on, he shoots two guys both together into a web, like a net web.
Yeah, like that's a different function on his web shooters. Like this one does a net that these guys will be under, but really trying to struggle to get out of. Yet all they had to
Now,
do was stand up.
Before we go on, I want to talk about this net because, Sean, I've got a feeling that this is the exact same net that the electric company used.
Oh, without a doubt, man. It feels like they're sharing props.
And not just Spider-Man and the electric company Spider-Man, but there were a lot of times as a child in the early 80s when nets seemed to be way more intimidating than they've proven to be in real life. Like just gently having a net thrown across you, draped across you. In real life, it's about like having a blanket thrown at you. Like a net is not that big of an obstacle, but man, did people struggle against those loosely draped nets back then.
Man, they sure do.
Do we have any more takedowns or are we at the subway?
Oh, there's a ton. So then the next one, he webs a guy to a pole.
Nice. I like that one.
Right.
I like
That's
that.
a good one. Then he again, our favorite, two guys in a net with his web net.
Yeah.
Then he webs a guy to a handrail, which is the Bruce Lee looking type guy, with his Ray-Bans on and all that.
Everything's just
Yeah.
like, oh, the cops will come for you later. Zip, 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 and put him do his thing.
and then there's my second favorite takedown in the entire movie, which is where he runs and jumps and slides across the conference table and he tackles the bad guy.
Oh, yes. That was so good. And then when the guy comes up again, he like jumps over him and does like a little switcheroo. It's just like it's the greatest lame thing ever. It's so good.
Oh, it's so good, man. It's so good, and that's all your takedowns in this movie. Because when you're watching something like this, like they have to come up with a creative way for Spider-Man to take out all these guys, but they only have so many resources at their disposal that it's going to be hilarious. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to start writing these down.
And I was happy to hear that the percentage of web takedowns was higher than I remembered, because I'm of the opinion, if you're making this version of Spider-Man in particular, every takedown needs to be a web takedown, because you've already got the rope, you've already got the net. It doesn't cost you any extra to throw that into the scene, does it?
It's true.
And I don't see any reason why like if you have access to a web slinger, why are you throwing a small stack of papers at a guy?
True. Oh, you know what? There is one more takedown. Sorry, I just went to page 2. Because this is my third favorite takedown. He webs a door, and he closes it real fast, and he knocks out a guy with the door.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I love that. Like, that's something you'd see in the more modern thing, where you web the thing on the wall and pull it, and it hits the guy in the back of the head. Now, that's actually clever. I got to give him props for that one.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
They never use webs enough in these in any Spider-Man thing for the most part. Some of them, we're getting there. We're starting to get better, but like a lot of the web shooting stuff is not nearly as prevalent as I would like it to be, or at least, you think about it as if you were Spider-Man, you'd be like, man, I'd be webbing up all over the place over here, man. It seems like they use it so sparingly.
And I can totally understand why they didn't do it, and it would have looked awful. And knowing that it would have looked awful, I really wish they'd tried for a couple of scenes of Spider-Man swinging across the rooftops on webbing, like Tarzan style. I just want to see what this production quality would have come up with for a way to film Nicholas Hammond swinging from a web from rooftop to rooftop.
It's really kind of sad, because we get no real Spider-Man, locomotion in this, if you will. He basically will he's at here's how the standard goes. Peter Parker's at a place. They need Spider-Man. He runs away, changes into a Spider-Man costume, comes back, and then just changes back to Peter eventually. That's it. Like, he never goes anywhere or does anything other than, like, the boat ride later on.
And you know what? If he's going to run away and then come back, it wouldn't have been hard, because Carol Burnett used to have this skit where Lyle Wagner would play Tarzan, and he would swing from a fake vine into the scene. And if you can do that on Carol Burnett's budget, they could have at least had Nicholas Hammond swing 12 to 14 inches on a rope and drop down and pretend like he just swung into the scene. Let our imagination.
Bruce, the problem is that Carol Burnett is a comedy, and this is serious drama.
Yeah, we do things real here. You know what I mean?
Oh man.
Yeah. So we haven't even talked about yet the big surprise in this movie, which is that the first time we see Spider-Man, the first time we see Peter Parker in this movie, it's 10 minutes into the movie, by the way. The first time we even see Peter Parker, not even Peter Parker as Spider-Man, just Peter Parker.
I didn't even know this was a Nicholas. I didn't even know that he was in this one again. And then he shows up, and I'm like, oh, he's back. Oh, okay.
It's always Nicholas Hammond, who Sean has gone on the record as saying is his favorite Spider-Man.
He is my favorite Spider-Man to this day.
You know what I love about him too, though, is that he's got there's a couple scenes where he's talking to the chick and whatever. He's got a very Tucker Carlson look about him.
Yeah, he does actually. You're right. He does look also, a little bit like Tucker Carlson, like he might be his uncle or something.
Maybe also like Tucker Carlson. There's the lady who was in the first movie. She's a series regular, kind of like his. I mean, she's not Mary Jane, she's not Gwen, but she's like the woman that's kind of the girl that's his squeeze in New York, that's always in all the episodes with him. But man, as soon as he goes to Hong Kong, he's like out of sight, out of mind. Whatever your
he's
name
a dumb
is,
dumb. She's hot.
But, he's like, he's got Emily Chan right there in front of him. He's got to go in for the kiss.
That's right.
And that's also a weird one where, man, sometimes actors just don't have good chemistry with each other, and there's nothing you can do about it. But, they don't even try for there to be, any chemistry between the two of them. I think that when he goes in for the kiss at the end, that comes out of the blue to me, especially because I think he's still maybe dating that lady back in New York.
That's so great if that's true. I really hope that's true. So when we first see Peter Parker in this movie, 10 minutes into the movie, by the way, he goes to see his buddy, Marine Corps Major Ted Danson.
Oh,
Right?
man, I thought. Now, here's the note I was making is that guy looks like Ted Danson. Was that
Yeah, he
actually
does
Ted
because
Danson?
it's Ted Danson.
Wow, that is awesome, man. 3 men and a baby.
I know. Isn't that crazy? I couldn't believe it when he showed up. Because it's so clearly him. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna look this up just in case. And it's him.
Sure enough.
Wow, because I was thinking that is a poor man's Ted Danson, but no, it was a
No,
a
it's
regular man's Ted Danson.
yeah, it's average income Ted Danson.
No, I like the idea that Ted Danson is a poor man's Ted Danson. Like if you got money, you don't want Ted Danson.
Oh man, you don't want 70s Ted Danson. You want late 80s Ted Danson.
Yeah. You want him post Spider-Man pre-blackface. That's prime Ted Danson.
That is prime.
You
Ted
think Ted Danson has to pay for a plane? I don't think so.
So, can we talk about how lame this J. Jonah Jameson is?
Oh man, he is just the worst of any J. Jonah Jameson that I've seen. And I guess I've seen them all.
He is just the worst.
Is he the same one from like the whole thing? Like, has this been the same J. Jonah Jameson throughout the Nicholas Hammond era?
I can't remember, but because remember in the last one that we saw the which is I'm guessing the first movie.
Yeah, because there's an origin story in there, so I figure that counts.
Yeah.
The J. Jonah Jameson character is basically the chief of police.
And I was going to bring that up, man. What happened to Pataki? I mean, this wasn't like it was a long run.
No.
How do you lose Pataki from the first movie to the third when it's essentially one season of recording?
I don't know. I don't know. It seems like because one of the things that killed the show is because it was just so cheap.
And also, sometimes you get people that'll do a pilot and before the show gets picked up, they've moved on. Pataki may have only been in the pilot for all I know.
Yeah, it could be because he actually was like a character actor. I mean, he worked a lot in the 70s. So that is very possible.
But so why, we were asking earlier, why Hong Kong? And you had mentioned the guy that looked kind of like Bruce Lee. And then we even have sort of a very brief training montage. And there was at one point where I thought, okay, so 1981, but when you read, it's like this was maybe filmed in 79. Like it sounds like nobody really exactly knows when the movie was made. And then I'm thinking, when was Enter the Dragon, Adam? I mean, there was like a kung fu movement in the late 70s, and I think they wanted this to be a Spider-Man kung fu movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, so 73 is Enter the Dragon. That's the thing is that, and I am a, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I'm a big martial arts movie fan. I probably own 60 plus martial arts films, and but big fan of all types.
I only like the ones with Shokasugi.
But this is so sad and pathetic. It's like, I mean, this is honest to goodness, like not even Dolomite level martial arts to where people are just.
There's really, it's like the first ingredient in a kung fu movie probably ought to be kung fu, and they kind of forgot about that part. I mean, we have one scene where a guy kung fu kicks the head off a statue, which, by the way, a very, very inefficient way to train people at kung fu. Like somewhere there's a sculptor. I mean, what do you think? The sculptor spends the better part of a year sculpting this statue, and he's like, okay, send in the next kicker. I mean, aren't there more practical things to kick than the head off of a sculpted statue?
They probably got a mold. They got a mold at this point. They made one, and then they made a negative, and then they're just like, pour cement in that every time we have a training montage, will you?
Hey,
Thanks,
when my kid took Taekwondo, a plywood board was good enough for him. They didn't get statues to kick.
I tell you what, man. I think these kids in these boards, man. There's no way that these boards are getting eaten up like that. Who are these people? Where are you people getting boards at that they're being chopped up like, so much confetti? I don't like it.
Man, here's what I like. I like the idea that Karate Club all got together on somebody's front lawn for karate practice or kung fu practice. I'm sorry, karate's Japanese. But they all got together for kung fu practice out in somebody's yard where they set it up, or maybe they even rented the park, and somebody brought out the fighting statue that they practice fighting against. And then they go, oh, man, Barney kicked the head off the fighting statue. Kung fu practice is canceled. We only had the one fighting statue.
The hilarious thing is that, like, I mean, the lead into that scene, it does. It's like a bunch of old people just doing Tai Chi in the park, and it feels like they're trying to get like they have to fulfill certain things in order to get the Chinese grant so they could film some stuff. So they're just like, well, we've got to show this building. We got to show the water and the boats and stuff. You also got to show some old people doing Tai Chi in the park.
Much like every current Marvel movie has to have a scene or two filmed in China now. It's kind of prescient in that way.
I'm telling you, that's what I think it started here.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's what they were thinking. But the thing is, they get all these kung fu masters, and I guess the guy who kicks the head off the statue is the one they're sending after Spider-Man or something. So you'd think he would use kung fu to attack him. But to the best of my knowledge, I don't think we really see Spider-Man involved in a kung fu fight, do we? It looks just like all of the other sorry fights.
It's kind of at the end of the movie, you kind of have that. You know, I mean, I believe that they actually have a stuntman who knows some sort of martial arts training in the Spider-Man costume towards the end of the movie.
Oh, I don't think I never think Hammond's in that suit ever.
Well, I was going to say that I thought he was because of the lack of any kung fu, because that movie poster that Sean has already mentioned loving shows Spider-Man doing a pretty darn cool looking kung fu high kick.
Yeah, it's awesome. That movie poster is awesome.
Sean, if I could tell Bruce how things work, that's a drawing.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's a drawing. All right. And what happened in the movie was what was real life. So there's a difference. I was like, hey man, that's a great looking poster. It's like, yeah, that's a drawing of what was clearly not in the movie. But here's the thing. It would have been
awesome if they had a little kung fu fighting.
Yeah, but they're all bad at it. They're all bad. Everyone's bad at all the fighting. It's like there's so many like just whiffed punches and kind of like almost what I like to call Panthers defense is we just kind of push people around a little bit. Just like, I got you. You should fall down now.
Here's what I would say. Now, I don't have the clearest memory of the era. And like I said, some people think this might have been filmed as early as 1979. But even in 1979, there were some people who knew how to do kung fu.
Oh, for sure. But
and they could have hired 3 of them.
And especially in Hong Kong.
Yeah, they could have hired 3 of them. You
know? But you know, when you have Americans who don't know what people want yet, because that's what this is. Like they wanted a kung fu movie without actually doing any kung fu. I mean, there's the promise of kung fu a couple of times, but it doesn't actually happen. So yeah, it's a whiff. It's a swing and a miss for sure. But there's enough of it so that if you are a little kid, you think that you've just seen some kung fu fighting.
And it's also, I get the idea that, this whole idea that sometimes censors are afraid of martial arts. Like you can have 2 guys fighting with chainsaws and they're cool with it, but if somebody does a karate chop, they get nervous. I never quite understood that. Like in the UK, the Ninja Turtles had to be called the Hero Turtles just because the word ninja was scary. Yeah.
Well,
like nunchucks were banned. I think nunchucks might still be illegal in the state in which I live, where anyone can carry a concealed gun without a permit now.
Well, Michelangelo in the Ninja Turtles 2 movie uses sausages as nunchucks because they had those strict guidelines saying you cannot use your weapons and stuff. And even in the UK version, they were like, sausages, oh, no, you shall not use that. We're editing that out. That's out of the UK version.
Oh, man. But
unreal.
People had this weird fear of martial arts and martial arts related stuff, which of course made me love it as a kid.
It starts with the nunchucks and then it's a shuriken to the eye.
They show Spider-Man getting shot in the back at close range with a pistol in the subway.
Oh,
and they're kind of cool with that, but I get the feeling like they were afraid to show any quote unquote ultra violent martial arts, but it's okay to have fist fights. It's just weird. It's like this weird fear and mysticism about martial arts.
Well, let's get into that for a minute when Spider-Man gets shot in the back in the subway.
Okay, so a couple things happen. There's this whole thing that goes down in the subway, and then there's a guy that kind of looks like Paulie from the Rocky series with his hat on.
Uh-huh.
And my son, when he sees this guy, says, "Dad, please tell me that's not Kingpin." I said, "No, I promise you it's not Kingpin." And then as the fight unfolds, for some reason, Spider-Man runs away from the 2 overweight middle-aged guys.
Uh-huh.
I don't ever understand why he's running away from them and running down the tracks. Why he's turning.
Well, he's
his
got the
back.
microfilm. He's got. The
Oh yeah,
microfiche.
that's right. He's that's what he came for, was the microfilm.
The horrible MacGuffin.
Right.
But then the guy just pulls the gun, shoots him in the back at close range. One of the most, I don't know, man. It's just like vicious.
It was really jarring, and then they left him so the subway could run him over.
I almost felt like if they had, at the same time, if they had shown me footage of a little kid with his hands tied and they shot him in the head from behind, like that's kind of how disturbing that felt. Something about just shooting Spider-Man in cold blood, and the fact that Spider-Man gets hit and falls down. My son goes, "What the heck? Is this how it used to be when you were a kid? Spider-Man got shot a lot."
This was the Dark Knight of Spider-Man. Let me tell you, son.
And we'll get to the other Spider-Man shooting later, but I want to stay on the subway thing. So Spider-Man gets shot in the back. He falls onto the subway. He falls onto the subway tracks, and the overweight middle-aged men are like, "So should we go after him?" And the other guy goes, "Nah, we'll just let the subway kill him." Like,
let the train finish him off.
And so they leave. And then the subway starts up and heads towards Spider-Man. He narrowly escapes, and somehow gets up from being shot in the back.
Two things here.
Narrowly escapes.
First off, the thrilling escape. You've got a moving train coming at Spider-Man. There are 700 exciting ways to get him out of that. One of them is not casually standing up and slowly stepping aside.
Definitely not, but that's what they went with.
The gunshot to the back somehow migrates to his upper arm. And
we'll get to that in a minute. Hold on to that.
I'll hold on to that. Go ahead. I want to hear what you got.
So the next day, we see Peter in street clothes, and he's getting a hot dog. and he's getting a hot dog, and then he oh my God, it's so funny. Peter's getting a hot dog from a hot dog vendor because the best thing for a gunshot wound
is a dirty water hot dog.
It's a filthy street dog.
And once again, my son commented, "Do you think that hot dog vendor is Stan Lee? Isn't Stan Lee the hot dog vendor?"
There you go, true believer. There's a nice dog for you.
So good. And so then he's reading the paper and getting the hot dog, and the two ladies show up. and now the gunshot he was originally shot in the back now has migrated to his right arm. and when he goes to move the paper, he winces a little bit, like just a little bit. And the lady goes, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "Bursitis."
I like it. There's not even any question about should we dig the bullet out. Like he just walks off a gunshot. And then I started wondering
good.
I wondered if he sort of became Wolverine or something.
Oh, don't listen. Haven't you ever hit like a spider and then it just kind of sits there for a second, then shrugs it off and just keeps on going? That's what happened to this guy.
No, man, I always know to double tap when I'm killing a spider.
You get out of here.
Oh, man. But
so
he walks off the gunshot. He walks off the close range pistol shot to the back. Do we want to go into the second gunshot?
Well, yes, because here's why. Because he gets hit with the tranquilizer dart, right?
Yeah.
And the part that I want to talk about is when he's at the doctor's office. Doctor pulls out the dart from Peter Parker, a man he's never met before, who's also still dressed as Spider-Man, by the way. Pulls the dart out and then puts the dart into his mouth to taste the poison from out of the body of this man he's never met before, who's wearing a Spider-Man costume.
I love it so much. Because that's the 70s right there. Just go, yep, that's death, all right.
And I love it that the cure for poison is acupuncture.
Oh, so good.
It's like the whole idea with amnesia. One bump to the head makes you lose your memory. The second bump brings it back. One needle kills you. The second needle brings him back.
Ancient Chinese secret, huh?
I like the way he unmasks him, and it's supposed to be a reveal. But then the reaction from Emily's like, huh, that was Peter Parker.
Huh.
Well,
I thought he ran away because he was a coward.
It turns out he's okay. I'm still not going to let him kiss me at the end of the show.
But I want to go back to the dart where he gets shot in the arm with the dart. I think it's the same arm, roughly the same location.
It is. It's the right arm, yeah.
And they have a close-up of like the dart in his arm, and the sleeve on the spider suit is ripped. And my son, once again, says, I bet you they had 2 spider suits. They had one with the rip sleeve to film this scene, and then they had the regular one for all the rest. And I said, no, son, they had a lot of things, but I bet you anything they did not have 2 spider suits, and they probably had to cancel the show because the arm got ripped in this episode.
What day after day, what's that spider suit got to smell like, especially inside that mask? Woo.
That does dovetail quite nicely because they actually rip his costume to get his mask off of him, right? Yeah. So my question is, how many spider suits does Peter take with him to China? Like, you got to think, because one he can only carry 2 bags with him.
You got the black symbiote suit. That's for formal occasions.
And so, like, you have like does he take 3 of them with him? 2 of them with him? There's at least 2 because we see him later in Hong Kong hopping around with another spider suit on.
Now, one thing that I'm not clear on is how long is this guy in Hong Kong? There are a lot of questions about the timeline here because even though they're there to prove a man's innocence, they do a lot of sightseeing.
They
like
really do, man.
If you're just there for a long weekend, I think you get straight to the point. But man, do they do some sightseeing. That's when all the mansplaining happens.
That is true.
and then also it's the bullet, or not the bullet, but the dart to the arm that leads to Spider-Man falling into the lake where we get to see that prolonged rescue scene in the boat.
Ah, so great.
I like the fall.
And I know that Spider-Man won in the end. Like somehow Spider-Man proved that the guy was innocent, but I kind of feel like a lot of that was yada-yada. Like I feel like after he was unmasked and he fell in the water, that the movie just kind of ended without a whole lot else happening.
Yeah.
Well, they find, because they keep the guy alive, and he has the letter from the wealthy American industrialist who lives in Hong Kong. They have that letter, and then Min Lo Chan is still alive, and so he's alive long because he does actually die in the movie, right, in Hong Kong.
Yeah, he dies somehow.
Yeah. And so and by the way, we haven't even spoken to this. You know, all the actors in this movie are pretty, they're pretty bad. But the one exception to that is the guy who plays Min Lo Chan. That guy is an actual good actor. His name is Benson Fong, and he is actually a good actor. And it's weird because it sticks out like a sore thumb in this movie.
And I think that just goes back to the long tradition of a lack of leading roles for Asian men in American or Western cinema. But I'm just glad that I'm glad they didn't just hire Mickey Rooney, if you know what or not Mickey Rooney.
Oh my God,
no,
you're not kidding. Jeez.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Spider-Man. You know good.
No, Adam, no. they understood.
Adam,
they already understood.
Yeah,
we had him.
Everybody knew what was being said.
But
it's fun and how horrible
something that's quasi Mickey Rooney is, okay, they get to Hong Kong, they go sightseeing. Now, there are people in the temple dressed as monks, but on the street, everyone is wearing what I would say is pretty contemporary Western style dress for the 70s in Hong Kong, or the 80s, or whenever this was filmed. Hong Kong was a British colony, or I guess it was still called a colony at that point in time. So it doesn't look that different than the streets on any European city or in the U.S. But then when Peter needs to go into disguise, he pulls out a costume from the racially insensitive section at the Halloween store. And then Emily says, as long as no one sees your face, Mr. 6'6" guy, no one will know you're not Chinese. And then immediately, we haven't seen anyone wearing like one of those cone-shaped straw hats, and we haven't seen anyone dressed like an extra from a bad Vietnam movie.
He goes, no. I want to dress like Raiden from Mortal Kombat. No one will notice.
But once he puts that on, suddenly Hong Kong is filled with people in those hats and that garb.
Yeah.
It's hilarious how quickly Hong Kong looks different once he puts that on.
It's the hat district.
And then they've got a helicopter at their disposal. Now, here's another thing, man. Where did they get the helicopter? Have you ever tried to get a helicopter on short notice, Sean?
I have, actually, and it is very, very difficult.
And not only is it difficult, would you say that a helicopter is A, very expensive, or B, not that expensive?
Well, it's set for fuel alone. I worked in news. For fuel alone, you're looking at $700 an hour to stay in the air.
Exactly, man. And they get this thing flying all over the place for a tracker that he says we have to get within half a mile. Now, we're in Hong Kong, which I've never visited Hong Kong. But by my understanding, it's bigger than most towns where it's easy to find someone.
It's a little spread out.
Yeah. So they fly in like blindly in a helicopter till they get within a half mile. And then this helicopter's just on standby, man. They like keep the propellers running. They're up, they're down, they're all over. I'm just like Adam said, I don't care, the exchange rate and stuff. Maybe it's a lot less expensive to hire a helicopter pilot in Hong Kong than it is in the U.S., but fuel is fuel, man. That's like a commodity that's expensive. The price is pretty consistent no matter where you are in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
But no, let's go up in another. But I love also too that like the interior helicopter stuff is all very poor man's process. They set him out in the like, okay, you're going to be in the parking lot, and we're going to shoot upwards into the sky that's just completely blue. Therefore, they'll think you're in the sky, and that's all. We're not sending you up in there. Oh gosh, no.
Oh man, here's what I would have loved, and they didn't do it, but it would have made the movie so great, and I was kind of hoping I would see it. But they should go Deadpool style where he's not showing his face and he's got the hat and the I don't know what you would call that shirt he was wearing that's supposed to look like so he would blend in Hong Kong. But
Let's
I would
call
love
it traditional.
Yeah, the traditional shirt and the straw hat, and he's blending in. Then he finds the bad guy. He should have thrown that hat off and whipped off the shirt and had the Spider-Man costume on under the disguise. Like that would have been awesome if he was dressed as Spider-Man with that conical hat on.
Oh, kind of like when whenever you see like the Justice League go to space, they all have their costumes on underneath. Yes, underneath
exactly.
the space suits.
That would have been a nice little treat if you had the Spider-Man, like when Deadpool would have done it.
Yeah,
when
Deadpool absolutely would have been like that. Yes.
Yeah, he puts the blonde wig on outside the mask when he's trying to disguise himself as a woman.
So let's like cut to the end of the movie here. So the lady, Emily, right?
Yeah.
She's played by an actress, Rosalind Chow, I think is how you pronounce it.
Yes.
And that lady still working today. I'm looking at her IMDb. She's got 3 upcoming projects, and she was in something as recently as 2018.
Wow.
And she's got like real credits on here too. Like she's in the OA.
Oh, yeah.
She's on the Muppets show, the new one that, failed miserably. Like she's got real credits on here. And still looks great.
I was about to say she's still pretty good looking. Oh, she was on Deep Space Nine.
Yes, she was.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, she looked kind of young in this. I would imagine she's like 18, 19. So it doesn't surprise me that, she's still working and looking good because, 50s or something. That's not bad at all.
Yeah, she's doing great, man.
Good for her.
But end of the movie. We all think that Peter and her hooked up, right?
Well, I mean, yeah. Here's the weird thing, though. And I'll dwell on this again. This is the 3rd time I brought it up, and I'm sorry. But there's this weird thing where he goes in for the kiss. Right. He goes in for the kiss, and she gives him the cheek. She like turns her head aside. He gets the cheek. He backs up. They talk for what might have been 90 seconds, might have been less. Then he goes in for the kiss again and gets lip to lip. And I don't care enough to go back and rewatch the scene. But, man, did he have some serious game in that few seconds so that he could go? Because I couldn't imagine having the courage to go in for that second kiss after I'd had the cheek offered up on the first one.
Listen,
in the old comedy business, I would have called that guy's a closer. That's what I would have said.
Well, he's getting the job done, man.
To the victor go the spoils, Bruce, and you gotta go
and
for
further
that.
Talking now, can you? I don't know. Do you have IMDb or Wikipedia at your fingertips there, Sean? Reading about Rosalind Chow. Mm-hmm. How old was she in 1980? We'll just split the difference. How old was she in 1980?
She's born in 57.
And yeah, she's born in 57, so she's 23.
Okay, so a little older than I thought, because I kind of felt like Nicholas Hammond looks to be a solid 35, but then again, people looked old back then. They
man.
They didn't stay out of the sun.
People are eating steak for breakfast and smoking.
Okay, so
yeah, he's
she
only
was born
3.
when?
He's only 3 years older than she is.
She was born when? 57?
Yeah, and he's born in 50, so
Yeah.
57.
So okay, still a little bit of an age gap, but man, he looked like, if you told me he was 49 claiming to be 37, I would believe you.
Oh, I didn't know Nicholas.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in this time too, where like they would have Hammond, like somebody of Nicholas Hammond in 1979, like he's a senior in high school.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There, there was the old joke where the person who was playing the high school student and the woman playing his mother would be like the same age.
Yeah.
Yeah, that still can be a problem sometimes, but you're absolutely right, man. Because I remember growing up, and when I got into high school, I was like, wow, back when my parents were kids, people looked a lot older in high school. Until I found out that all those old 70s shows had 40-year-olds as high school kids.
Where's Luke Perry?
Yeah. Oh, man.
Well, we've come to a point on this show where we have to say, you know what? I wonder how this thing connects back to one Sylvester Stallone.
Thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement.
Ooh.
George Chung is a Chinese-born character actor who started his career in 1979, working on shows like Police Story and The Streets of San Francisco. His career is a stroll down all Gen Xers' childhoods, and I usually hate when people just start listing things, but in this case, it just doesn't do George Chung any favors if I don't list out some of his career highlights. Because he's in the Dirty Harry movie, The Enforcer. He's in the Kentucky Fried movie, The Bionic Woman, The Rockford Files, Wonder Woman, Fantasy Island, the TV show MASH. He plays Dr. Pi, I think is how you describe is how you pronounce it, Dr. Pi. He plays Dr. Pi in Spider-Man: The Dragon's Challenge. He's in Manimal. He's in T.J. Hooker. He's in Magnum P.I., Airwolf, The Fall Guy, Knight Rider, Big Trouble in Little China, The A-Team, Weekend at Bernie's, RoboCop 2, Jake and the Fat Man, Sneakers, Glengarry Glen Ross, Saved by the Bell, The College Years, Batman Forever, Seinfeld, Lethal Weapon 4, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, 6 Feet Under, ER, How I Met Your Mother, Mission Impossible 3, Lost, and he's about to be in something called Bring Me the Head of Lance Hendrickson, which sounds like a great movie. And I know that was a lot of listing, and I'm very sorry because I hate lists. And while George Chung has been in 199 different projects, I'm quite sure when asked, his favorite role would be his role as Ty in the 1985 movie Rambo First Blood Part 2. Now, in my mind, the most Stallone movie of all time is Rambo First Blood Part 2. He's shooting everybody, his shirt's off. No woman would ever choose to see Rambo First Blood Part 2. But it's also weirdly watchable. It's actually kind of good. It's like opening a time capsule, and inside, instead of finding treasures of the era, you just find steroids and HGH. And there you have it, HMPers. This week's Stallone connection is George Chung. Now, JJ and Minlo Chan, let's review Spider-Man: The Dragon's Challenge, which I'm sure will all give a Dick Grayson.
Of course. Here at Hero Movie Podcast, we have our own patented Robin rating system. If you'd like to check out what that is, head over to Facebook.com/Hero Movie Podcast. It's right there at the top of the page. And while you're there, throw in a like. We'd really appreciate that. I'm going to start first, untraditionally here. But I got to say, this thing is just, what a slog. It's not good. The fighting is just absolutely awful. There's a couple, like, if you want to, watch it for a goof, have a blast, go at it. But for me, I'm just like, there's not enough to even recommend it on quite that level. I'd say watch the first one because, like, you can at least laugh at some of the bad CGI and stuff a little bit more. Well, CGI, quote unquote, you know what I mean? But it's not good. It's boring. Not enough Spider-Man in your Spider-Man film, says I. I'm going Stephanie Brown. Bruce?
Well, first off, I want to say I was looking at Rosalind Chow's body of work, and apparently she was in the Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island. So I'm going to have to go back and revisit that because it's an awesome movie from what I remember. But I don't know what to say about this movie. It's missing some of the campy magic from the first one. There's no real delightful hammy acting. Like I said before, the movie really could have used some Michael Pataki, but there's, there's almost kung fu. I was never really miserable, so I can't make it say anything bad about it per se. I was never really miserable. I just, didn't enjoy it as much as the first one. I guess if you ever wanted to see Spider-Man get shot, this is the movie for you. And also you're a deranged fiend, but I am going to also give it a Stephanie Brown.
All right, Keenan.
This is the reason why I have a podcast, this movie. I love this stuff so much. As much as I complain and as much as I hate watching all of those terrible direct-to-video movies that we keep having to see for some reason, is exactly the same amount of love I have for stuff like this. I love this movie. I probably will watch this again just on my own, just to really give it a breakdown. I love this thing so much. Even if the first time you actually see Spider-Man in costume is 14 minutes and 6 seconds into the movie, which is way too long. But I love this movie so much. I love Hammond in this movie, as you know, Bruce. I love this thing so much. I can't give it a Dick Grayson because it's too much. But I can definitely give it a Tim Drake. I love this thing. And to me, it is exactly why we have a dumb podcast, is for this reason.
It's also the reason in my dumb book that I wrote that when I decided Sean would dress like Spider-Man, I made it very clear that it was the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man.
Yes, I did notice that.
Let's not muck about. Let's get him the right one, for heaven's sake. So that is it, everybody. Hope you've enjoyed the show. But if you'd like to see more of the show, you can actually see the show in person at DragonCon next weekend, Labor Day weekend, Atlanta, Georgia. It's going to be a heck of a time. In the meantime, by the way, we'll be reviewing Roger Corman's Fantastic Four. So we decided we've been talking about this for a while, but we also have decided DragonCon would be the best place to do something that's absolutely atrocious. And that what better way? We've already done the documentary about the making of the movie. Now we need to do the movie. In the meantime, Bruce, where can people find more of your work on the internet, sir?
You know what? It's a strong week for Nerdspawn Genesis. So I'm just going to go ahead and roll in and just say, check out Nerdspawn Genesis. It's available on Amazon, Amazon.com, as an ebook or as a paperback. And I'm going to say most of the time I tell folks just get the ebook. But when it comes to Nerdspawn Genesis, the paperback really feels good in your hand. It's got a nice cover, a nice finish on it. I kind of think the way to go with Nerdspawn Genesis, if you have the chance, is the paperback. But, of course, the ebook is still an option. So go check that out on Amazon.
Get the paperback. It's like, what if Dashiell Hammond wrote a book about nerds? Pretty much the same thing.
That's what I was going for.
Sean?
You can find me on Twitter at Hero Movie Sean. And I have another podcast that I used to be on sometimes called Preacher Podcast. So show up for that if you're a fan of that show. And that's it.
We'll be doing it, everybody. So we'll see you next week here at DragonCon. Our show will be on Sunday. Follow us on the Twitters and all that kind of good stuff. And if you're around, you see us walking around, throw something at us. I mean, not me. Don't hit me. Hit Bruce. But
not a small stack of newspapers.
Just throw it.
Oh, hey, yeah, and I forgot. You know what I forgot to ask? You know what I forgot to plug is if you're a Patreon member, you should really check out, because it's part of your deal. You should check out the Dinger Zone, because there's something so fun about that show to me. It's a half hour of us talking about random topics. This week we had a couple of good questions, and then Adam asked about barbecue.
Hey, look! I was just, it's around dinner time. I was a little bit hungry, and I'm like, there's no barbecue places that are open at this time of night on a Sunday.
That explains it, because we've done Dinger Zone now for 4 weeks, and 2 of the 4 weeks you have had food related questions.
Yeah, it's because I should be eating right about now,
because you're hungry.
Because I'm like, gosh, it'd be good right now. Next week, sushi talk. So check that out, everybody. We're gonna get your hot takes on sushi, and the only way to do that is to be like the people who helped bring this show here for you today. They all voted to watch Spider-Man. What's the name of this? The Dragon's Challenge, and we thank all of those people over at Patreon. Patreon.com/HMP. Join the revolution today, everybody. So that's it. Join us at DragonCon, everybody, for Roger Corman's Fantastic Four. Until then, for Sean Keenan, Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie. I will not be at DragonCon.
Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web in his eyes, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. This is strong, this is good. He's got radio